Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of me reviewing highlights. So quick tip, I put in chapter markers for this entire video, all the 10 highlights that I cover. I put in chapter markers as well as descriptions and links to the book. So with that, let's get started. With the first highlight, that's from Hidden Potential. It's a new book, just came out. Character is more than just having principles. It's a learned capacity to live by your principles. So, in this section, the author is comparing character and personality. And one of the things about there is, of course, a vast difference, and there is actually a sequence of paragraphs about the differences between, oh, this is personality, but character is different. And this is one of those things that character is really more than just having principles. It's not just having them, but it's a learned capacity to live by your principles. So there is a lot to unpack over here. One thing is it's the capacity to live by your principles. It's not just having them, you also live by them. And of course you can say that you don't really have principles if you're not living by them, right? But that's the deliberate uh, and a conscious act that you are also choosing to live by them. Otherwise, you can't really tell that you have principles in the first place. And it's a learned capacity. That is, you have to consciously plan for it. It can't be the thing that you do until things get hard. So it's when things get difficult, and it's very difficult to live by your principles. It's especially important at that time. And when does that happen? That happens only if you have a learned capacity to do it. So a lot to unpack over here, and of course a lot more the paragraphs in this section. So, but it's really, I think that's good for now. We'll move on to the next one, which is getting things done. One, every open loop must be in your capture system and out of your head. Two, you must have as few capturing buckets as you can get by with. Three, you must empty them regularly. So this is like essence of the system about the capturing part of getting things done. That is, um, everything that you think about that, that's an action that's longer than 2 minutes. That's not something that you can do right now and be done with it. Everything like that should be written down somewhere. It should be out of your head. You should stop thinking about it. There is, of course, more discussion about how you write about it, but it's not covered over here, so I'll skip it. And then the second point is you must have as few capturing buckets as you can get by with. So that in a software, for example, in the tool that I'm using, I would have as less labels as possible, labels or tags. So if I have a lot of tags, then I'm often choosing where to put it. And sometimes, a task is relevant to multiple labels. Or if you want, you can think of it as folders. That, and then you must empty them regularly. That's also a critical part. You can't just let them be there. You must empty them regularly, because if you don't empty them, your brain knows that, okay, it's not going to happen. It's like the task is going there to die, so I still have to worry about it. The only way you can get something truly out of your head is if you empty them regularly. So that's why the third part is really the first part. A task won't go out of your head until you can trust it, trust the system. You can trust that bucket, so to speak. So yeah, moving on. Cues. People are always looking for appreciation, acceptance, and acknowledgement, he said, and his goal is to show this verbally and non-verbally. That's the essence of the book. Cues, becoming conscious of our cues, the different visual cues and auditory cues that we convey in our conversations. The essence of any interaction is that people are looking for appreciation, acceptance, and acknowledgement. So we can, for example, write a message, and that works, but it's often not enough. We also, many times we say that, okay, we want to hear things in person, or we prefer this, like a video call over just written messages and all of that, because we miss those non-verbal cues and verbal cues, the auditory cues, which is often lost when you're just communicating over text. So yeah, that's the motive understanding cues and leveraging them in communicating better. So let's move on. Drive. In flow, goals are clear. You have to reach the top of the mountain, hit the ball across the net, or mold the clay just right. Feedback is immediate. The mountain top gets closer or further. The ball sails in or out of bounds. The pot you're throwing comes out smooth or uneven. It's describing the state of flow where you're getting such an instant feedback, and that keeps you going, that builds your motivation, and you're flowing along with your tasks, so that you're working on something, and oh, that works out very well. You get immediate feedback that you did the right thing, and you move on, you do the next task, or next step in that particular task. And that's what the passage means by then the goals are clear, that you know what you're doing. When we don't, it's very difficult to achieve that state of flow, because we're constantly kind of oscillating. Okay, is this what I'm supposed to do, or is this what I really need to do, or is this something else I should do? That often hits on productivity. If there are a lot of things to do, we often have to pick one and focus on one. That thing, that multitasking is a myth. It really is a myth, because trying to multitask in these cases, it defeats flow. It kind of negates it. So yeah, that's that. Let's move on. The leader's greatest return. When you're trying to identify potential leaders to develop, look for influence. The qualification that must be present in someone you wish to develop as a leader, because leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. If people can't influence others, they can't lead. So the author is stressing a lot on influence over here, and I kind of agree. I think I think it's to do with the negative connotation around influence. Sometimes around, I mean, because it's so close to manipulation. But it does not have to be manipulation. That's certainly not what the author means. It's just, I think, what plays in my mind when I hear the word influence, I think of manipulation. I don't know if you do the same. But yeah, like, that's why I don't really relate to this particular passage. But I see the point the author is making over here, that you need to have, as a leader, you need to have influence of a particular sort, so that your goals are clearer, your motives are clearer, you are able to get people to do things that they otherwise won't do. As in, not they otherwise shouldn't do. Again, it's not manipulation. It's getting people to overcome their own personal barriers for personal growth. That's really what it is. That's why influence is required in leadership. Well, let's move on. The molecule of more. The neurotransmitter dopamine is the source of desire, via the desire circuit, and tenacity via the control circuit. The passion that points the way, and the willpower that gets us there. Usually the two work together, but when desire fixates on things that will bring us harm in the long run, for example, a third piece of cake, an extramarital affair, or an IV injection of heroin, dopaminergic willpower turns around and does battle with its companion circuit. So this passage is kind of describing the interaction in our brains, where dopamine plays two different roles in different scenarios. Not scenarios, in two different circuits, like the book is saying. There is a desire circuit which basically drives our desires. That's where dopamine influences our desires. For us to that makes us long for things. Like that. I really want this particular thing. That kind of thing. And the control circuit, which enables us to get those desires, the things that we want, we build a plan to go get them. That's the control circuit, and it's describing an interaction between them, which is fairly clear, straightforward. So I'll move on to remote not distant. Companies Birdzog, Morningstar, and AES use multiple sources to inform their decision making process. Rational analytical approaches are critical but not the only factor. Emotions recognize the power of inquiry. Why am I angry, fearful, ambitious, or excited? What does this reveal about me or about the situation that is unfolding? Intuition. Reality is usually ambiguous, paradoxical, and non-linear. Intuition uncovers wisdom in surprising ways, unconsciously connecting the dots. I think it's describing three different factors. Now I'm forgetting the context over here. But from what I can make out, it's describing three different factors companies can use in a decision making system. So we have rationality, then we have emotions and intuition. So like three different uh, factors in a mental model or in a decision making model. I think the rest of it is clear. I don't really remember anything else of the context. So I'll move on to 7.5 lessons about the brain, another passage about brain. What we call mental illnesses, then, maybe the rational body budgeting for the short term that's out of sync with the immediate environment, the needs of other people, or your own best interests down the road. So it's comparing that. So it's describing really that brain is the machine that it's an organ that's responsible for body budgeting. That's it, really. The energy that we consume, the food that we consume, turning it into energy and then budgeting it for various needs. That's the main purpose of brain, the organ, and everything is a product of that. Like that's the ultimate goal. Basically, budgeting your body's resources, and everything that we build in our minds, that's really a product of this. So for example, we figure out better ways to prepare food. That's because we are going to consume that for our own for obtaining energy for our bodies. So it's really body budgeting. So the book describes that in quite some detail. I'm not going to go there. The scope of this passage is about mental illnesses. So the author is speculating that it may be like what we call mental illnesses. It's really an illness because we can't understand the concerned person, the person suffering from that. It may be entirely rational to them what they are doing, because for them, their brain, that's how the body budgeting is working at that moment for them. So it makes sense to them, but it may not make sense in the long term needs or the immediate environment. So like it's just out of sync. That's what the author is saying at that particular moment. Let's move on. Measure what matters. What business leaders have learned very painfully is that individuals cannot be reduced to numbers. Even Peter Drucker, the champion of well measured goals, understood the limits of calibration. A manager's first role, Drucker said, is the personal one. It's the relationship with people, the development of mutual confidence, the creation of a community. Or as Albert Einstein observed, not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted. I just had a conversation about this book with someone this morning, and written by an author who is but like, and this book is entirely about OKRs, and um, having a takeaway such as this in this book, it was quite profound for me. So that's one of the main reasons I put it in. So it's yeah, it's I think the highlight says everything that I need to say. I don't really need to add on anything over here. So I'll move on to kill it with fire. When you first take on a legacy system, you can't possibly understand it well enough to make big changes right away. As part of those pragmatic changes, we also invested a lot of time documenting and researching the system. Again, I think it's straightforward. Something that we often forget because we try to um, understand or comprehend a system, or like legacy system are very complex usually because a lot of things have happened over years in it. A lot of additions, a lot of removals, a lot of tweaks or workarounds or hacks that have gone in. So it's really complex, and we can't possibly understand all of it well enough to make big changes right away. And of course, the book covers a lot about handling legacy systems. That's what the book is about, really. So you have to invest a lot of time documenting and researching the system. That's really the first step. As sometimes it's often called discovery step. And I think that really brings us to the end of our highlights today. That's yeah, it's fairly nice. I think I really enjoyed all of the highlights today. So with that, have a good November. Take care. Bye.